Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming to this talk. So my name is Alex and I'm a front-end developer at Ansarada. I'm going to be talking about my first few years in the world of tech. So I'm a career changer and I'm pretty passionate about sort of encouraging all types of people to enter this world and sort of acknowledging that it's a really tough time kind of for a lot of people because it's a challenge to start from scratch and to just go into this thing fresh. So that's where I'm coming from. Just briefly, an overview of my journey. I started out as a law student, so I did a long, arduous 5-year degree, and then I worked for 2 years at a startup doing biz dev, operations, account management, that sort of thing, nothing to do with code or law, but I got really interested in tech in that point and followed that passion to General Assembly, similar to Fee earlier, doing a 3 months web development immersive course. From that, I have spent the last 3 years almost at Ansarada. I started out in dev support, doing back-end, pretty much all SQL and a bit of C#. Then I was full stack for the next year. And then the last 10 months I've been working in front-end in React. And then I have a bunch of other random niche interests to sort of round out my personality, if you're interested, that I refer to there. But cool. I wanted to start off by kind of acknowledging who is Brenda, what is the deal with my talk title, why is this the case? So it comes from this meme, and the original meme is Carol. It's a Twitter thing, it's like the Twitter jokes are pretty, I love Twitter jokes anyway. But so Carol, basically, this is from knowyourmeme.com. It's a catchphrase used in hypothetical dialogue jokes on Twitter that imagine a character named Carol who offers pedantic advice and platitudes, to which the poster aggressively rejects the advice by saying, "Shut up, Carol." And there's like a lot of jokes like that. So then, why Brenda? Well, there's this meme that I'm not going to explain, but it also has quite a long history, but Brenda is also a character that gets poked fun at occasionally. So I'm going to leave that there, and then I'll come back to sort of the point of it a little bit later, because I wanted to start out with, I guess, the journey of discovering this new discipline and new career, a new life, really, from the big change I made a few years ago. So bear with me while I tell you a quote from a poem by one of my favorite poets, Sarah Kay, and it's about falling in love. And it says, "Falling in love is like discovering the ocean after years of puddle jumping." And for me, this quote applies kind of to learning to code. But not only did I, basically I kind of learned to find the joy in like sort of learning and like that joy of jumping in puddles. But then from that also learnt that there's this whole depth to to coding and the ecosystem, and the ocean is vast, and so you discover that there's so much more to it. And so as part of that, this when you're starting out, there's this amazing sort of euphoric feeling that you get when you start to learn and you get you're solving problems and you're challenging yourself, and it's just really, really engaging. For me, it was this total like immersion and focus and excitement, and I just really, really loved it. And I was like, oh, I can do this, and I get it, and I'm good at it, and I want to keep doing it. But to complement that, you also have a lot of these moments where you are not doing so well, like, because it's a challenging thing. So coding is hard, problem solving is hard, and moving from actual learning languages and data structures and how to solve problems, you move into a job and you suddenly are faced with like build systems and like your whole team and how your entire stack works and things like that, and so it's hugely overwhelming. And so there's this cycle of feeling like, yeah, I'm so excited, I'm the best, and then feeling really terrible. So what I wanted to focus on for the rest of this time was, how we can stay afloat, especially in this early, like really challenging time. And basically, I want to focus mainly on sort of kind of lofty-ish, but like mental habits, like things that we can focus on. And caveat, these are just things that have helped me. I don't stick to them all the time, but they're things that when I recall, they're really, really helpful even now. And I kind of wish I had have taken more note of them earlier on. So my first tip is to learn yourself. So as devs, as developers, part of our skill set is to recognize patterns. And so I have tried to take that as I've been developing that and try and apply that to myself and my behaviors and the way that I learn, and to try and really pay attention to exactly what works and what doesn't. And that has been super helpful for me. And then the second one about knowing yourself and learning yourself is to keep a handle on why you started this in the first place. So initially for me, like I was a bit stagnant and stuck in my previous career. I had sort of been, had various interests and had been like a high achiever with no real direct direction that I wanted. And then, so I just wanted to explore something new. And then finding that, that passion, like I mentioned before, that real puddle jump excitement feeling is what, when I struggle, I try and come back to that initial state. So, yes. My second tip is forming compassionate communities, or finding them if you can. And this is just, like, this world of tech and dev, for me, I have never, I guess, met so many people who, I guess, are similar to me and have like similar interests, but are also going through this similar phase of trying and failing and trying again and that sort of thing. So just, it's amazing. I can't even overstate how. So these are a few of my channels and my friends that I have on Slack that just like are always there, and to vent if I have trouble at work or if I'm like anything, right? So if you can find these communities and foster them, these like sort of safe spaces for yourself, it can be really helpful when you're having a hard time. So next is helping others in order to help you. And the first part of that is just reaching out. So there's this thing that I used to do when I was like initially coding, where I want to solve it, and it's kind of an ego problem, right? You get so far into the problem and you're almost there, you think, but you might not be, and you've gone so far down the rabbit hole that you just want to do it. And it's sort of learning when to pull yourself out of that and go to like either tap the person next to you on the shoulder, or just like do a bit more research, or ask someone for help. Learning exactly when you need to do that is really, really, really important. And that's as soon as I start to notice myself just getting in like tunnel vision, it's when I know that I need to jump back out. The next about helping others is this notion of teaching, and it applies to like upwards teaching and downwards teaching. And so by upwards, I mean teaching people who might be like more technically advanced and competent than you, but who potentially aren't such great communicators. So I started out my company with some amazingly talented devs technically, but they didn't know what my level was. Like coming out of a course with like only 3 months experience, you don't really know everything that you need to know. So it takes a bit of courage to be able to say to those people, like, can you like stop at this point, or can you go back, or like, I don't understand what you've said. And to try to, it's this two-way street of communication to assert yourself, but also to sort of guide them and train them into how that they can help you better, because they always will want to help you, in my experience anyway. But sometimes there's just this bit of fear on the other side, that they don't know how. And so you sort of need to get out of your comfort zone a little bit in just facilitating that interaction. And in terms of teaching down, by that I mean mentoring, I guess, mentoring people that are more junior than you. And that can start from any stage of learning, right? As soon as you have like a few months experience and you're talking to someone who knows nothing, it's often like way more valuable for them, because they get someone who's just had that bit of insight. Similarly with people who have had years and years of experience, the language and the all of the hierarchy that you build up in your mind can be so far removed and you forget. And so it's really important to start as soon as possible to reach out and help other people, and it's also really confidence boosting. So at my work, when we hired our first junior, that was after me, I just had this, it was so amazing because finally, instead of being the person that always had to ask questions and always think that I didn't know what was going on, and you don't really have a chance to articulate what you know. As soon as someone else comes in, you realize how far you've come and how much you've learned, and it's really good. So seek that out as soon as possible is what I would advise. And if you can't do it at your work, there are so many communities around Sydney that you can do that with. The next one is deciding that your work is not a reflection of your worth. So this comes from a colleague that I used to work with who wrote a book about happiness, but it's really resonated with me in that we often attach our sort of self-worth and our value to what we know and what we do and what we can achieve. But it's not. So we need to realize that we are worthy and we are valuable as separate to what we do. But yes, on the flip side of that is that we still need to celebrate ourselves anyway. So celebrate those small wins, even if you don't think you should. The next one is trusting the voice within. As Christina told us back in 2002, there's that inner voice that we all have, most of us. I know some people who don't have it, apparently, but there's this sort of internal monologue that we have, and the advice that I have always listened to is to trust it. The thing is, unfortunately, that voice can often be, rather than a builder-upper, a really critical jerk, pretty much. So this brings me back to my Brenda point, because and where it came from was, again, Twitter. I found this kind of innocuous tweet once when I was trawling, and basically it's this idea that you sort of personify that inner voice and you give it a connotation, so that's why the meme comes into play. And when you have those intrusive thoughts and the ones that are saying you're not good enough, you can't do it, you just sort of tell her to go away. And I found that sort of occasionally, when I notice those thoughts, to be really useful. So what I would advise is that you question Brenda, your inner voice, whoever she or he is, and you can do that through awareness, knowing and recognizing that for what it is. Is this me really, or is this the inner voice that Christina was talking about, or is that deeper? Do I need to delve deeper for that voice? Relaxation really helps with this, for me particularly, hugely. So just whether that be meditation, recently yoga, yin yoga has been really great. If I find that I relax my body instead, the mind can follow. And then self-compassion, so just being a little bit kind to yourself and being no, Brenda, I'm a good person, I can handle this, I can do it. And then you end up being yeah, I can do it. Because you are enough, you can do this, you can. But, sometimes it doesn't feel like enough. Sometimes you can apply all of those things that people tell you to do and stay healthy and try and be on top of your game and feel great. Do all the mental habits, do all the yoga, but it's just you still have Brenda won't shut up, or you just can't do anything, right? And so this is where it can get a bit more serious. So, I personally, I suffer from mental health issues, anxiety and depression. I always have throughout my teenage years, but didn't sort of realize it until university, where I had a really, really hard time. And it goes up and down, but what I found about sort of studying to become a developer and then becoming a developer is partly because of this really intense emotional highs and lows that I showed in the Titanic photos before, of being euphoric and not. It sort of, I think, exacerbates this cycle of feeling great and then feeling terrible, and it can go either way. And then also there's all these pressures you put on yourself, there's all these things that you read on the internet, and it can just get really overwhelming. And so sometimes, it's just not enough to deal on your own, right? So some indicators, these are things that I personally have gone through as well, that realize to get to a point that you might, not be okay. So things like, I got to a point where I was crying like pretty much constantly, where you feel bad about that as well, like sort of this cycle again, taking on excessive responsibility and things alone, where not seeking help, difficulty making like easy decisions is a super early trigger point for me, is noticing when I don't know which shoes to wear. I'll spend 10 minutes being like, do I need my boots today or do I need my flats? I don't know. Or being really, really self-critical about failures, and then obsessive thoughts, or like staring at your screen for a long time, constant self-destruction. So these are personal trigger points, like personal things that I have experienced, and when I get to those points is when I go, okay, something needs to shift, right? And so I wanted to call this out because I believe that, I've spoken to other people and I know that it's pretty prevalent, especially in a lot of industries, but our industry as well. And so I wanted to just give some facts about the scope of the problem in Australia. So 1 in 5 Australians will experience a mental health condition in a given year. So that's current, right? Almost half of all Australians will experience some kind of mental health condition in their lifetime. 1 in 4 will experience anxiety specifically, and that number's higher for women, a little bit lower for men, so 1 in 3 women, 1 in 5 men. And this one was really kind of shocking to me, which was that a lot of Australians that do have these conditions will not try and access treatment. They won't even try and reach out to anyone at all. And this number is higher for men. So only a quarter of men who have anxiety and depression will seek any kind of treatment. And it sort of leads to higher rates of suicide, and suicide being the leading cause of death for people, for adults under 50 in Australia, higher than national road toll, higher than anything. We don't talk about it that much. So I just wanted to say that, we can have all these hacks, but seeking treatment is an option, right? It's really important. And so the biggest hack that I have is just talking to your GP, because some people don't know this, but you can get 10 subsidised sessions with a psychologist from a GP, and so it can make it a bit more affordable. So as soon as you go to them and they give you sessions, and that's over a year you get 10, which is great. And then they can also give you options for medication if that's something that's necessary. And then I would also suggest just talking to people how you're feeling. Feel free to, if you want to or need to, reach out to me afterwards, and I can point you in directions. And just know that you're not alone in this. I just wanted to finish off finally on this idea of compassion for others, and self-compassion. It's a choice, and so is being a jerk is a choice, being compassionate is a choice. When I look back at my last few years, or even my entire life, I realised that it would have been a lot easier had I been kinder to myself, and had I been easier on myself. And the times when I've succeeded the most are the times when I've just relaxed and let myself just be, right? Rather than constantly trying to get somewhere where I don't even know where I want to get. So forgive yourself for decisions you've made. This is also a quote, from the poet, the same one. Forgive yourself for the decisions that you've made, the one you call mistakes when you tuck them in at night. This stuff is hard, so be kind to yourself and be kind to each other. Thank you.
From that round of applause, it's a very important topic, so thank you for sharing your story with us.
No worries. Thank you.